So apparently there is a new rumor or leak going around that I'm a little late to because for some reason I actually didn't stumble upon it until now. But it's very interesting. It has to do with Naughty Dog, a new IP, as well as the Last of Us 2 release date. Now, when it comes to The Last of Us 2 and its release date, this is something that we've been speculating upon for a while now, and people are getting absolutely desperate for anything, any official piece of information regarding this game because it's been a long time, and we just, our excitement is still there, but we really want some kind of update regarding The Last of Us Part 2. But for now, rumors, leaks, and speculation is the best we have. And we're going to be starting with this new IP. Now, it says here that it's been a while since fans experienced a new intellectual property from Sony first-party studio Naughty Dog. The Santa Monica-based company is well known for its previous work on franchises like Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, the Uncharted series, and The Last of Us. Even with The Last of Us 2 having suffered multiple delays and rumored to be launching in 2020, now they don't say this here, but those are internal delays they're talking about. It apparently hasn't stopped the studio from working on a brand new game. The rumored leak originally comes from 4chan and was reposted on Reddit, so fans should take the following details with a grain of salt. According to the information that was obtained from a meeting between Sony and Naughty Dog, its next IP is an action-adventure game currently known as Stray's Cross and is planned to release on the PS5. So, moving on from that, we have the other leak, which I believe comes from the same place. I know it comes from 4chan, and the leak says that, same thing, they kind of got this information from an higher-up meeting between Sony and Naughty Dog, and apparently the release date is going to be May 22nd, 2020. Now, let's just focus in on the new IP for a second here, and then we'll talk about the release date leak. I believe this. I believe this simply because it makes a lot of sense that Naughty Dog is going to pursue a new IP after The Last of Us Part 2. For all we know, The Last of Us Part 2 could be the final chapter in that universe. There's a good chance that everything that Naughty Dog wanted to do within this universe will be wrapped up with the second game. We know it's going to be huge, and they've been working on it for a very long time, and because of that, I think they already know it's going to sell really well. They already know it's going to do really well, and we have to understand that when it comes to these creators, they don't like to continuously work on the same things. They like to move on from one thing to another and really kind of spread their creative wings in that way, and they always want to challenge themselves, usually to do something new, fresh, and different and exciting. And I believe this. I know it comes from a source that's really shady, and I will say this. I don't necessarily know if I believe the details here. I don't know if I believe that it's going to be an action-adventure game and that it's currently known as Stray's Cross. If you think about it, we know that Naughty Dog's biggest strength lies within creating action-adventure games, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to want to make their new IP within the same genre. If you think about it, it seems like to me they'd be more likely to try to do something different. Now, what that could be, I don't know. Maybe, the one thing I will say is that maybe this will be an action-adventure game, but maybe it'll have more RPG elements in it. I think that there's a lot of people who would maybe like to see Naughty Dog kind of do something like that. Something we also have to keep in mind here is that Naughty Dog, I don't think, wants to continue Uncharted. This is something we've talked about. It's been rumored that San Diego studio under Sony is currently working on that, but what I've actually heard now is that there's a different studio. I think they're known as the Visual Arts Group or something like that, but there's a separate studio. It's not actually Sony San Diego. It's a separate studio that is being led by a former lead at Naughty Dog that is currently working on a continuation of the Uncharted series. I think that's nearly confirmed. We can definitely expect that. So, when you think about this, Is it likely that Stray's Cross really is the next game for Naughty Dog? I think it could be. Does it make sense that they would be working on it while also working on The Last of Us Part 2? Yeah, if you think about it, it does make sense. That's actually pretty common where, the people who are in charge, of course, their main focus is finishing the game that they're currently working on and shipping it, but they also have to think about the future. They also know that, the next generation is right around the corner, and that, they can definitely ride out The Last of Us Part 2 for a good while, but I'm sure, they're pretty much in the final stages of this game. They're probably in the polishing stage and just finishing everything up, making sure it's absolutely 100% perfect before they give a release date and actually ship it. So I think it does kind of make sense that they're slow, they're maybe in the conceptualizing stage, you know what I mean, of working out a new IP and thinking about where they want to go after The Last of Us Part 2. Because, make no mistake about it, the second they decided to make a continuation to The Last of Us with Part 2, they were also already thinking, well, what are we going to do after that? That's just how things work. Things are always moving so quickly, and they always have to try to be one step ahead. And so I do think that they certainly will be working on a new IP. As to whether or not it's going to be action-adventure, I think it's 50-50. I think it would make complete sense if it was, because that's what Naughty Dog is good at. That's what they're known for. But I think there's a 50% chance that they might just want to do something completely different, something completely new. And as to what it could be, thinking about Strays Cross, frankly, I have no idea. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see whatever Naughty Dog decides to do next. Right now, I'm trying not to think too much about it because my focus is on The Last of Us Part 2. And speaking to this leaked release date, the last leak we heard said that the game was going to be coming out February of 2020. Now, I've always had a little bit of trouble believing the February release date because that just doesn't seem right. That just doesn't seem like the right time for Sony to launch a game like The Last of Us 2. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if it turned out to be true. I wouldn't be like, oh, wow, that's terrible timing. But if you think about it, that's pretty close. That's pretty close to Death Stranding. Death Stranding is coming out in November. You have December, January, and then February. That's about 3 months there. So that's really close. I think it's enough breathing room, but we're talking about The Last of Us Part 2. And it also depends on, Sony's plans for The Last of Us Part 2 when it comes to the PlayStation 5. There's a lot of people that believe that it's going to be a cross-gen title. I think it could be, but I don't know. This May 22nd date, that sounds like a time frame in which Sony would choose to launch The Last of Us Part 2. If I'm not mistaken, the first Last of Us game came out, the summer? I believe the summer of, 2012 or 2013? I forget which year, but I know it was the summer. And so it kind of makes sense for them to want to go more towards May. Another reason they could be doing it is because maybe Sony has something else planned for, the first half of 2019, something earlier. It's really hard to say. I mean, something that has become abundantly clear to me is that Sony is trying to be very strategic with a game like The Last of Us Part 2, as well as their other titles. They knew that they were going to have Death Stranding for holiday 2019, and we were all wondering what's the big holiday game going to be. And now we're all wondering what's the first half of 2019 going to look like for Sony, because we know they're going to need at least one big game. And you really kind of run into an issue when you think, well, where does that leave Ghost of Tsushima? There was a lot of people speculating that The Last of Us Part 2 was going to be February of 2020, and then Ghost of Tsushima was going to be around May. Exactly where this leak is saying that's where The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be. There's some people who think that Ghost of Tsushima is going to be holiday 2020, but that further complicates things a little bit because we don't know what Sony's plans are for releasing these PS4 games. Are they going to want to market Ghost of Tsushima, if it is a holiday 2020 game, as a PS5 title? Would that confuse people? Could that hurt the game potentially? See, these are all questions that we don't have the answers to, but I will say this. I wouldn't be surprised at all if May 22nd is actually the date that Sony has in mind for The Last of Us Part 2. Would I prefer it to be February? Honestly, I will say yes, simply just because the sooner I can get my hands on the game, the better. But at the same time, I can't say that May 22nd sounds like, a date that is with not within the realm of possibility. The last thing I'll say about this is there's probably going to be some people who ask the question, well, what if they're switching things up? What if they want to release Ghost of Tsushima before The Last of Us Part 2? Now, this may sound crazy to some people, but humor me here for a second. I don't think it's actually that crazy. The reason why I say this is the number one thing people are going to say is if that was true, if Sony was actually going to try to release the Ghost of Tsushima before The Last of Us Part 2, how could they do that when they barely have shown anything of the game? Here's how. You ready? It's really not that complicated. PSX 2019. Have a massive, massive focus on both of these games at PSX 2019. Show a ton of footage, maybe even more footage for Ghost of Tsushima than you do for The Last of Us Part 2, and give the release dates for both. Let us know that maybe Ghost of Tsushima will come out February 2020, and then they want The Last of Us Part 2 to come out May of 2020, and they want that to be the last major PS4 exclusive to end the generation with the biggest bang possible. That's how I could see that being a reality. Now, how likely that is, maybe not. Here's one last thing I gotta say here too. This is important because I know people are gonna mention this and they're gonna be annoyed if I don't mention it. Another reason why Ghost of Tsushima may be much, much closer to launching, maybe even more so than The Last of Us Part 2 than people might think, is Sucker Punch has been working on this game for a long time. Now, they've been very quiet with it, and they are still hiring people, but that's relatively normal, But they've been working on it for a long time. For all we know, Ghost of Tsushima potentially could be further along than The Last of Us Part 2. Now, is that likely? Probably not, but it's very possible. That's the thing here. So, I don't know. It leads to a lot of very interesting speculation. All I know is that and I don't mean this, in a negative way, but man, I am getting tired of the leaks and rumors. I just cannot wait. I cannot wait for Sony to give us something official. It seems like, something else I forgot to mention too, and I apologize for, waiting this long, but something else that was mentioned within this leak of the May 22nd release date of 2020 for The Last of Us Part 2 is that apparently Sony's planning on talking about it this autumn. That's when they're going to have their big blowout, supposedly. So, I don't know. Guys. We are going to have to wait and see. At this point, I'm going to ask you, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think about this? Do you believe that there's a new IP being worked on by Naughty Dog? Do you believe that it's going to be an action-adventure title, and it's currently known as Stray's Cross? Do you believe that The Last of Us Part 2's internal release date is set for May 22nd? And do you think there's a chance we could somehow end up getting Ghost of Tsushima before The Last of Us Part 2? I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. Really helps it out. Lets me know you guys are enjoying the content. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon. And feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.